technical indicators, do you think that they work?
Well, yeah, if you say something like a moving average is nothing more than an expression of momentum. And if I say I'm a believer of momentum, then yes, again. So a lot of these indicators are nothing more than adding a whole bunch of numbers together and dividing by something. So the moving average, add the last 20 numbers and divide by 20. Or an RSI, look at the positive returns, look at the negative returns, do the average, divide one by the other. And so these are nothing more than expressions of filters. So a technical indicator is nothing more than a filter that tries to get rid of noise. Some of them are lagging and some of them try to be forward-looking by looking at turning points in the market. The question you have to ask yourself is not so much as, what's the magic behind this filter, but how persistent is the behavior in the market that will allow you to apply the filter. So what you tend to find is that certain types of filters are very good when the market's quiet, like overnight, when you don't expect a lot of news announcements to come. Because the one thing that shocks the market is news that then creates policy shift and anticipation about the future. So as long as you're okay with applying these things during periods where you don't expect big shocks, then yes.
Is it necessary to use indicators like the ones you mentioned or Bollinger when you're trading in forex?
Absolutely not. No, we talked about discretionary traders that have an economic model in their head and that try to understand the flow of money based upon people's needs, from cross-border transactions to policy changes, policy shifts. But what you tend to find with these guys is that they might get the direction right, but they will get the timing wrong, which is one of the big bane of macro or discretionary macro traders. They tend to have a very good conceptual picture of their head, but over the short term, they manage to have the wrong entry, and the losses they incur in the meantime tends to really squeeze them, and then they lose out and then they don't participate in the longer term move. So what you tend to find with these guys is that they're also very, very good at timing the market over the short term. And I think over those particular kind of daily situations, or even over the period of a week, that's where more basic technical stuff like momentum, support, resistance really comes into play.
Charts versus indicators, which works better for you?
That's an interesting question, because to me, I think both are the same. I mean, an indicator is just a derived version of a chart. So if you're asking how I go about developing my systems, then really it's about looking at patterns in the market that can, for instance, include questions such as, if this indicator has moved so much over this particular time period, then what does that imply for price? So ultimately, the way I think about the markets is about, I have a cause and what's the effect? Or you can even ask backwards, that's the desired effect. Every time that happened, which indicator stacked up in which way, as an example. So ultimately, both equal footing. What really matters is which one has the better handle on describing the effect that follows.
What's the difference between indicators and strategies?
An indicator is a component of a trading strategy. So an indicator, as we said, is an input that'll cause a particular bias in the market. But that bias, usually a lot of people will express it as completely binary, buy or sell. But it's more important than that. It's about how much do you buy, how much do you sell, and ultimately when do you get out and how do you protect? Or if you look at a portfolio view, you'll have indicators per asset that then have to be combined. So for instance, it could be that one indicator you have less confidence in than another indicator, and then you weigh them appropriately. So an indicator is about allowing you to create a bias about the future. A strategy is about combining these biases into a trading view.